UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good evening to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And there really is only one story in town at the moment, and that is what is going on in the Middle East, and who can guess what might happen next. I do want to talk to you about this at midnight, but I mean, to be honest with you, things can change so quickly that forming a question is going to be particularly difficult. But we are now being told that the UK and NATO allies have agreed to boost spending on defence and related areas to 5% of GDP by 2035. This is way more than we are spending at the moment. We're spending around £57 billion a year. That is set to rise, as we know, as it was going to go up to 2.5%, 3%. Now it's going to go up to 5%, which will account for roughly, it's difficult to say because of GDP, but around about 125, 130 billion pounds a year. Are you persuaded now that we do need to up our defence spending? That's going to be the question. But bearing in mind, like I said, that this is a rapidly changing story and that anything may change between now and then. And don't worry, I'll be keeping an eye on all the screens. If there is any breaking news, I will bring it to you first. So there's no need to go anywhere else. Before that, we have Amy Fisher here in the studio. She's going to be going through the newspapers. I suspect the papers will be a little bit late for the same reason as I haven't formulated my midnight studio yet, because so much is changing, but they will be in by then, hopefully most of them anyway. We'll also be speaking to Lester Munson, who's a principal at a government relations firm BGR Group and senior fellow at the National Security Institute in Washington DC, to get the US reaction to what has just happened. But before all of that, our defence analyst and author Paul Beaver joins us now to discuss the very latest. Paul, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. A lot of the stuff that we're getting through at the moment is looking like this attack on Qatar. The Iraq attack apparently has not happened. That's been cleared up now. There has been no attack on an Iraqi base that we know of so far. But the one in Qatar seems to have been choreographed in the same way that Iran's attack on Israel some months ago was just to save face. Is that what it appears like to you?
It certainly does look that way to me. The main target was Al Udeid, which is a joint US-UK operating base for something called Operation Shader, which has been the operation over Iraq and Syria, which has been ongoing now for 5 or 6 years. I mean, this is a big operational base. It was there, it must be 20 years old by now. And a few days ago, we saw that all aircraft and all vehicles had been removed from Al Udeid because there was good intelligence to show that Iran would attack Al Udeid because it was the closest thing of America, or as an American flag, that they could attack. So it looks to me, from seeing video, and I've got friends in Doha who have sent me pictures of missiles in the air being intercepted by both Qatari and US air defense systems. And it seems to me probably 15 missiles were fired. And there seems to have been some sort of warning as well. So this is absolutely a show face, absolutely a way of Iran just doing something against America.
I mean, and they used the same number of missiles, is my understanding, as well as bombs were used against them by the US. So this seems to be, look, we're going to save face. We're going to do it this way, so that basically, so that Khamenei's base can see that he is not weak. But then you come to a question about Donald Trump's response to this, and he referred to this as a weak response. He also said they've got it out of their, hopefully they've now got it out of their system.
Mm-hmm.
With your knowledge of the Middle East, how will that message be taken by the Supreme Leader?
Well, if the Iranians are sensible, and there are still sensible people in Iran, they will go, right, we've done that bit. It's a little bit like the attacks on Israel last year. You know, we've done something, we've saved face, and now we don't need to worry about anything. And I think President Trump, who always plays to his domestic audience first, has probably got that right from their perspective as well. So I think this is a very good place where actually the United States and Iran could say, okay, we've both done what we said we would do, and we'll now stop. Underlying that, Petrie, is the whole question of regime change. There is no doubt that this regime in Tehran is absolutely appalling. It's medieval. It's totally abhorrent in the 21st century that people should be hung by the neck in prison, that girls should have an eye cut out because they won't wear a hijab. All of that is completely unacceptable, I think. So it may well be that the Americans would really like there to be regime change. They do, after all, have a bit of past history here. When the Ayatollah first went to Iran in 1979, they occupied the embassy. They took hostages, and there's a real feeling that perhaps a day of reckoning was going to come. Well, maybe this could be the time of that day of reckoning.
The thing is, when you're looking at the state of Iran, as opposed to the parallels are always drawn with Iraq, is that actually the Ayatollah, he is the supreme leader, but it's not like in Syria where it was just one family, or in North Korea where it's one family. He's already set up people to take over from him. So if he were to be taken out, this is a much more organized regime than people think of, and even, you know, with their medieval behaviors, they're not medieval when it comes to ruling and militarily.
No, I think if you look at Iran, it's an organized state. The Iran Revolutionary Guards Corps basically controls all functions of life. This isn't just a bunch of clerics who think that they are busily doing God's work, as it were. No, this is an organized state, and it's on a war footing. They are trying to galvanize the country together. But it's a big country. You have to remember, in the north you've got Azeris, in the south you've got Baluchis and Arabs. You've got the Persians around in Tehran and the center down through to Isfahan. I mean, these are all culturally different groups. So Iran, it might be the oldest country name in the world, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the country is united behind its leader, behind the supreme leader.
If you look at Iran, though, Donald Trump again is saying that and Pete Hegseth and the like, and JD Vance saying that they've completely annihilated the nuclear facilities in those three places. But we've seen images of lorries outside Fordo a couple of days before it was struck, seemingly moving something. Now, that could easily have been the enriched uranium from that site and taken God knows where. And the Iranians are saying, well, look, you can bomb the site, but we've got decades of knowledge now. We've got people who know how to build, if we want to build a bomb, and if they didn't before, they probably do now, to be honest, want to build a nuclear bomb. So really, how much damage has been done to their nuclear ability in the future?
Well, I think your question bodes three sort of distinct parts. The first is Iranians are very clever. The Persians have always been culturally, artistically, educationally, scientifically ahead of most of their neighbors. They are a brilliant people. I've been lucky enough to go to Iran. They are amazing, amazing people. However, without all the resource, it will be difficult, I think, to build a new weapon. Now, we won't know what damage the Americans have done until somebody goes in there and inspects. There should be an International Atomic Energy Agency visit to do that. I doubt if Iran will allow that. So we probably have an idea. Israeli intelligence seems to have people inside the system who will report back. Now, whether the Israelis will want to tell us that or not, I think is different. And we don't really know yet what they mean. The other thing I think is,
carry on.
Sorry, I was just going to say very quickly, the other thing is North Korea is incredibly friendly with Iran.
Yeah.
It has an easy way of transporting a nuclear weapon and a few launch vehicles through the Russian Federation to Iran. So we shouldn't by any means discount Iran's capability just because 2 nights ago there was a very successful bombing raid.
The other question is with Fordo, that Israel apparently were re-bombing that site. Does that tell you that perhaps the damage done wasn't as Trump would have us believe, that it was total annihilation, and that perhaps breaking the crust over the top of it enabled Israel to go in and bomb further?
Well, I haven't seen all the pictures yet because that operation is still continuing. But I would imagine that what the Americans did was deep penetration into the enrichment halls, into where the centrifuges are, where they convert various isotopes of uranium into weapons grade, including plutonium. So I think that that was one part of it. The other part is all the infrastructure around. Which gives the Iranians the capability, electricity and water, the barracks where the scientists were living, and all of that, all of the facilities around. Now, I have no doubt the Iranians have moved stuff. They're bound to have evacuated, first of all, their people, because the brain power is really important. But secondly, the computers and the records and all of that. One raid, as amazing as it was, 40 hours of flying by B-2 bombers, remarkable, using a very sophisticated bomb with a really interesting penetrating warhead. All of those technical things are all very well, but at the end of the day, have they done a 100% job? And I don't think they have, because nobody is ever able to do 100%.
That brings me really to talking about Israel. And, you know, while we're all going, oh, you know, Donald Trump is sending out messages again going, congratulations, world, it's time for peace. Well, they're far from it. I mean, Iran and Israel are still bombing each other. They're still at war. Israel seems to be less keen on talking peace without, they more likely seem to want total surrender, as Trump was talking about only a couple of days ago.
Well, you have to sort of ask yourself, what does it mean, surrender? You know, total surrender. What does that mean? The leadership in Iran, some of whom have indictments in the international court, they give themselves up. The regime changes. They have an election. They appoint the crown prince of the old ruling party. You know, what do they do? I don't think surrender is relevant, and I was interested to listen to the Secretary General of the United Nations. I don't often agree with him, but I felt that he was right to say diplomacy and negotiation is the way to stop this. But Israel will do what Israel feels it needs to do. There is a domestic agenda for Israel in this as well, but they also, of course, remember, are simultaneously at war with Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, all of whom are backed by Iran. So, you know, this is a big operation. It's not just an American news bite. This is something that is going on, and I think will continue to go on for some time. Whether it be continually air raids, I don't know. But as the Israelis have shown, they'll come up with something if they really need to.
And that again brings me to proxies, these proxies that you were talking about in the region. And there's not only proxies in those countries, but also in Iraq, there are Iranian-backed militia. And Iraq is in a very odd place right now because it seems to be riding two horses. It wants to keep Iran happy, but it needs America as well for its own security. It doesn't like Israel flying over its airspace. It can't do anything about that. So what would happen if a proxy were to attack a US or a UK airbase in somewhere like Iraq, or one of the proxies were to attack in other areas in the region? Would that be seen as coming straight from Iran, or would Iran try to say, no, we didn't order that, they were just acting in our defense?
Well, we're going back to the days of Osama bin Laden, aren't we, when he had a whole bunch of people around the world that understood what he wanted, but he didn't give them direct orders, and they went off and blew things up and shot people and whatever. Iran is starting to run out of money and people. One of the issues that the West has, I think, is Iraq and its boundaries. I'm afraid that the British are, well, actually, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, 1916. So the British and the French are responsible for the lines in the sand, which are drawn with a very straight rule through the desert. But if you look at Iraq, the Kurds in the north could easily have their own country with bits of Iran and bits of Syria, bits of Turkey, although of course Turkey will never give up its land. The center section is Sunni. It has its adherence to Saudi Arabia, for example. And in the south, you've got the Shia, who are the same strain of Islam as the Iranians. And they look south to Tehran rather than looking north to Baghdad, if you like. So it's very complex. I mean, in 2006, during the beginning of the second Iraq war, there was a lot of talk about should the West orchestrate a division of Iraq? Would that be a safer thing to do? Would that stop the bloodshed? Well, who knows? We didn't do it. But it's a little bit like all of these conflicts that around the world. Should we have changed the boundaries in the Balkans, for that matter? So it's a difficult one, Petrie. I think that should there be an attack by proxies on an allied base, British, American, whatever, I think that is something that would have to be judged at the time by its ferocity and the damage that it did and where it was and who did it. So it's almost impossible to generalize on that.
But it's not beyond the realms of possibility, if not probability.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Iran has a sycophantic followers of the Shia Islam who will do all sorts of things. I mean, people perhaps have forgotten that 2 million young Iranians just threw their lives away charging through the Al-Faw Peninsula and the marshes against Iraq, and were just mown down by machine guns and bombs and rockets and airplanes. There's no shortage of, it seems, martyrs in Iran. I just hope that somebody can have enough power to actually stop this from continuing. But of course, we normally look to the United States, and they're an actor in this. They're part of this. I mean, they say that they're at war with the nuclear facilities and not with the Iranian people. Well, I can believe that. They're not at war with the Iranian people. But they are with the supreme leader and the Iran Revolutionary Guard School.
Can I hold you for a minute, Paul, if I just quickly take a break and then come back to you in just a second? I've got more questions that I'd like to ask you. A quick break here, but I will be back with Paul Beaver in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And with me at the moment is Paul Beaver, a defence analyst and author. And we've just been talking about what's going on in the Middle East at the moment. And we started talking about proxies there and martyrs to the cause, which takes me on, Paul, to again the very real possibility of terrorist strikes against countries. Even in America, there may be sleeper cells there. We don't know what's going on there. What is the likelihood, again, going back to, the past where it was an ideal as opposed to a direct order. Can you see a rise in terrorist attacks across the world because of what's just happened?
Well, I'm not privy to any secret intelligence on what Iran's got in terms of sleeper cells or affiliates around the world. They seem to be pretty good at supplying and causing mayhem with Hezbollah, although they've been amazingly quiet over the last week, and I would imagine because they were pretty badly hit by the Israelis earlier in the year. Hamas is totally fixated with Gaza, quite rightly. And then the Houthis, well, President Trump has apparently got a peace treaty of some sort with the Houthis. So I don't expect them to do much against Western shipping in the Red Sea. What I do think will happen, and it may or may not be through proxies, that we'll see some action around the Strait of Hormuz, which is between Iran and Oman, right at the opening of the Gulf into the Arabian Sea, because there's less than 20 nautical miles. In fact, there's probably something like 12 nautical miles of navigable water for big tankers, etc. Now, Iran could do something there, and it could use proxies to do that. But it is rather cutting off its nose to spite its face, because the situation is it needs to export, and that's the only way it's got out as well. It needs its oil to go out and its gas to go out too. It depends on whether the death cult of the Iranian regime is real, and to what they do. So I think we should be looking at the Strait of Hormuz as the next place of interest.
Is Donald Trump naive to think that was one and done?
Is there said again?
Is Donald Trump naive to believe that he can just do what he did and it's one and done, that his part in this is over, he's out? Is that naive?
Yes, I think it's very naive. Donald Trump has never been in the military. He's not a diplomat. He doesn't understand foreign policy. He understands business deals, and he thinks that this is a business deal. It's not. It's far, far more complex than that. A time for peace, certainly. I mean, no one injured in the attack, and all of these things. Yeah, all these things are relevant, but. At the moment, it seems to me that Donald Trump just wants to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And he keeps on doing and saying things which he thinks will help him with that. But Israel's not finished yet. There's unfinished business with the mullahs in Tehran.
When we look at the UK response to all of this so far, are we being weak? Are we being led by our wallets in terms of trade talks and things like that? Are we being robust enough, do you think?
No, I think we're probably doing the right thing. I think there's very little we can actually do if we take sides with Israel and the United States on this. I mean, we have in a way taken sides. I mean, the tankers that have come through with all of the supporting aircraft. I mean, there's a huge American build-up, based in and out of Britain and other countries, Spain, Italy as well, Germany. So There is that, but that's under a treaty obligation, so it's not saying we're part of the war. I think what we are quite good at is actually whispering in the ear, but I'm not sure if this president of the United States, unlike his predecessors, quite takes kindly to the old colonial power whispering in his ear and saying, "Hang on, Donald, just cool, be sensible here." I think we have very little uh, influence with Israel on this as well. So we are doing the right thing because it's the only thing we can do.
But Starmer seemed to think that, sitting next to at the G7 meeting, sitting next to Donald Trump, he said, no, he's not going to attack. He's, I understood from him that there was going to be no movement in that way at all. Trump told the rest of the world that 2 weeks was going to go past before he made any decisive move. We know that's abjectly a lie because he attacked at the weekend. Now, some people will say, of course, he's not going to tell us when he's going to attack, etc., etc. But he didn't trust Starmer. He didn't tell anybody that this is what he was going to do. Do you think that's because he didn't know he was going to do it, or that he just didn't want to?
I don't think he'd made up his mind. I think President Trump is one of those people who works on impulse.
Just terrifying.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if he was absolutely right when he said to Prime Minister Starmer, "I'm not going to do anything for 2 weeks." He really meant it at that time, which is why the White House is so difficult for the West to read at the moment, to absolutely be sure. You have to just watch what's going on. Even Donald Trump's own diplomats are now confused by what's going on in Washington, and that is not a good thing to do.
It absolutely is not a good thing. What does, in your view, Donald Trump is saying peace. We've touched on this. What will Iran want from the peace? What will Israel want from the peace? What will the USA want from the peace? And do you think that any of those line up?
Well, Israel's the easiest one. They want to not be attacked, and they don't want a country which has made it part of its constitution that the annihilation of Israel is its duty. That's a very difficult thing. Israel wants regime change. It wants to have a benign, probably secular regime in Tehran, going back to the 1970s. That sort of level. The United States, as a country, is obviously interested in peace because it's about trade. The Americans are as a trading nation, just like we are. And when there's war, profiteers make money out of the oil price rise, but that's about it. What does Iran want? Iran wants continuity. It wants to exist. It wants to continue. The mullahs want to still be there. Nothing really has changed from all this expenditure of ordnance and the lives lost. All we're seeing here is exchanges of high-tech weapons, which have yet to do anything significant. But I say yet because I'm not convinced that we have seen the end game here.
And finally, before I let you go, I'm asking a lot of you tonight, Paul, but I just wanted to touch base with you about Brize and Orton and the fact that these people were able to just take their scooters in and spray aircraft. Now, I think I'd be thanking the Palestinian action for showing me what a glaringly awful security situation our aircraft were in. What's your take on this?
Well, we've had lots of these incursions before. We've had groups getting into Faz Lane, into RAF Watersham, all sorts of places. This is particularly serious because it's 20% of our tanker fleet.
Awful.
Put out of service, and it is a difficult situation because Brize Norton's a huge base. In the Strategic Defence Review, the Lord Robertson, his team said, we have all our eggs in one basket here. It's got one runway, and all our transport, all our air mobility, all our refueling tankers are all based there. I mean, we were lucky they didn't do more.
I agree.
And I think that there's no doubt that it's time to look and see, well, the Royal Air Force Regiment was formed in 1941 or 42, I think it was, to defend air bases and the likes. Well, okay, that's it's not a thing for commercial companies to make money from. We should actually be doing this properly. There'll be a major review of this, and it'll be really, really interesting to read. And until then, I think we have to say, I'm sure that every base in Britain and overseas has been thoroughly reviewed. And I think that Palestinian action this is not vandalism. This is traitorous behaviour. I mean, they should be banned as an organisation without any doubt at all.
But they have pointed out that, rather glaringly, that our security is woeful.
Always good to have somebody to do that. We Brits are really good at learning from our failures.
Yeah, we certainly are. Paul, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I'll talk to you again soon. Paul Beaver there, defence analyst and author. Time for a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And of course, coming up at midnight, we do have the phone in, and we're going to be boosting spending on defence and related areas to 5% by 2035. Now, when I last spoke to you, we were boosting defence spending to 3%, I think it was, and many of you felt that that was going too far. I wonder if, with the changing face of the world at the moment, that you agree that now is the time to start spending more on the defence of this nation. You know, just basically I want to talk to you about how you're feeling about the world at the moment. Do you feel that Donald Trump has made the world a safer place, that we are now safer than we were before? There's no doubt that Iran having nuclear weapons would never be a good idea, but I'm not convinced that they were as close as Israel said they were to getting those. It just smacks of weapons of mass destruction that we were told before the Iraq war. So I'm not convinced they were that close. Should they have been stopped? Yes. Is all of this necessary? I'm not sure it's going to achieve what anybody thinks it's going to achieve. We're on a knife's edge at the moment. Donald Trump seems to think it's over, one and done, for him anyway, for America anyway, but it isn't over. Let's now get the American view with Lester Munson, who's principal at the government relations firm BGR Group and senior fellow at the National Security Institute in Washington, D.C. Lester, thank you so much for joining me. What is the mood there in Washington at the moment?
Well, I think everyone's following the kind of back and forth, literally between the U.S., Iran, Israel, and other folks in the region. Qatar, tracking, minute by minute what's going on. I think there is a view that after the latest episode today, that we may be in a better place than people thought, with Iran telegraphing what it was going to do. That making the defense against their attacks much, kind of much more straightforward, perhaps easier to do. I'm not an expert on how you do counter missile activity, so I don't want to say it's easier, but I think having that warning that came from Iran made it seem like Iran was looking to take action, but not cross the line that President Trump had articulated of taking American lives. So as to de-escalate the situation after the U.S. strike over the weekend.
Qatar, though, has, although they must have been in on this, they must have agreed to it to some degree, have said that they reserve the right to strike Iran directly. Is there a sense that that is just hyperbole, a bit of showing off, a bit of,
I'm sorry, who's saying they have the right to strike Iran?
Qatar.
Oh, good question. And I'm not sure. I think Qatar, which has positioned itself as a bit of a Switzerland in the Middle East, the place where you can have talks where folks who are adversarial can come together and try to find a way forward, didn't really want to be in this position, I suspect. But there they are, right next to Iran, with a giant U.S. base in the middle of it, and there they are. So they were kind of thrust into this.
When you look at, okay, so we have a situation here now where potentially Iran has saved face. They have been able to strike back for their people in their own country. They don't look weak. And then you have Donald Trump on Truth Social declaring that their response was a weak response. I mean, that feels to me like poking a hornet's nest. I mean, why the hell would you do that?
Well, Petrie, I don't know. It's not the kind of thing I would do. I don't think it's the kind of thing you would do.
No.
It does seem like the kind of thing President Trump would do. I think he sees things in my guess, and I'm guessing here, is that he sees things in a realist sense of the kind of foreign policy ideological approaches. He's a realist. He sees power. He sees that Iran does not have much right now, that Iran is on the back foot, that Israel is ascendant in a significant way. And Iran is essentially defenseless against any kind of attack from the U.S. or Israel or others at this point. And so there's a lack of respect for someone who's that weak. And I think my guess is it's something like that.
However, Iran is not really that weak, is it? Because it has proxies, it has backers, it has, people who are happy to be martyrs to a cause. That is something that Iran has always had. And with attacks like this feeling very personal to people, they don't even need a direction from Iran in order to deliver on the Iranian message.
Well, fair enough. And there's certainly not a total lack of capability, but in the context of the balance in the Middle East right now, they're not in great shape. Their forces in Gaza are losing every battle. Hezbollah was just utterly decimated by Israel in the last 9 to 12 months. The Houthis maybe have a little bit more capability in Yemen than some of these other proxy forces. Iran itself probably retains the ability to do some things militarily, but certainly not what it used to be. And it's true that these attacks, taken from a certain perspective, may help the regime with its own domestic legitimacy, because they've been subject to protests across the country at various times over the last few years for various issues. And it would seem that there's a certain number of Iranians would be thrilled to have a new government based on these protests that we've seen, covering a number of different issues over different time periods. And it's true, this attack could strengthen them a bit, but it also reveals, I think, in a way, that the Iranian government can't do the basic functions of a national government, which is to defend its people from outside attack. They have utterly failed in this regard today. They are in bad shape relative to other actors in the region. If you were a person close to real leadership in Iran, whether you're in the military or in the security forces or in the malacracy or what have you, and you see that things aren't working out, and you or a cadre of your friends might be able to change leadership and take Iran in a different direction. Now seems like the time where that might happen. So I do think the regime may be galvanized in some ways, but vulnerable in others, where it's clear their system of running the country is not terrific, and they've gotten themselves in a corner here, and there's not really a clear way out for them. I'm not saying it's totally bleak and that they're doomed and that there's absolutely going to be regime change. It just seems like it's more likely now that something internally could happen from someone or some group close to the Ayatollah that might decide we have a better idea about how to run this place.
If you look at Iran at the moment, and has it surprised you how politically isolated it appears to have become very quickly from the axis of evil, if you like, North Korea? They've been horribly quiet, I have to say. I never trust Kim Jong-un when he's quiet, but that Russia, they're paying lip service to it. They've been getting most of their weapons from Iran. They're not in a position to really help Iran, and I don't think they want to get dragged into that. Their aim is to take the whole of Ukraine. So Russia, kind of not really there. China's more interested, it seems, in keeping the status quo in terms of the economy there. Pakistan possibly could become a thorn in the West side. But actually, Iran, from having that sort of hateful friendship group, appears they've all turned their back on them.
Well, what is this, what does this alliance have to offer? Really, it's not prosperity, it's not happiness of the people, it's not freedom and liberty and a better way of life for your children. It's doom and gloom. It's approbation from the international community. It's a bunch of incoherent, ideological, radical systems that aren't compatible with each other. It's a giant mess, and I don't think it's once you put a little pressure on the system. And I'm not necessarily endorsing a whole bunch of military action here, Petrie. I think this is just the reality that if you put a little bit of pressure on that system, all of these cracks are going to be revealed. They don't, China is of those countries the one closest to the rest of the international community. Their prosperity in China depends on being able to trade with the West and a bunch of other, interested modern economies. Not necessarily true for Russia and Iran and North Korea. They can go be, rogue elements and have some sort of path here. China doesn't really want to be part of that at the end of the day. So I think one of the big questions I have coming out of all this is, where does Xi Jinping go? What is he telling the Iranians? They'd had a bit of a kind of de facto alliance, or at least a non-adversarial relationship. Is that going to continue? Is he going to tell the Iranians, please keep resisting the West? Go ahead, fight this fight. We got your back. Why would they do that? At the end of the day, the other countries in the Middle East welcome the end of the Iranian nuclear program. They may not say that publicly, but behind closed doors, they're all saying that. My sense is European countries thrilled to have the Iranian nuclear weapons program delayed or eliminated here. It is clearly one of the biggest problems facing our national security here in the West, potentially. Taking it off the board is a good thing. Yes, there's going to be some price we may have to pay here, but if it's relatively small, as we saw today, this could be a win. I'm not so ignorant of history and what's been going on for the last 25 years that I'm smiling or I'm like upbeat and thinking everything's going to come up roses. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs here on this roller coaster for sure. But if net assessment is taking out the Iranian nuclear weapons program is something that can be done and you can ride out the consequences, okay, that's probably a very good step that just happened. Still a lot of work to do. Still, there's going to be things in the Middle East are always more complicated than you want them to be. There's always knock-on effects. There are unintended consequences of every action. And there's always a little bit of a whack-a-mole game going on for sure. And we're going to have to deal with that. And the more we can kind of come together between Washington, London, European capitals, responsible actors in the Middle East, that will go better because we can kind of confide in each other and hang tight and ride this out. This might be a better way forward than we've had for a while.
Lester, is it okay if I hold you for a couple of minutes? I've got a few more questions that I'd like to ask you, but I've got to do my duty and go to a commercial break. But if you can wait just 2 minutes, I'll be back. That's Lester Munson there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And with me at the moment is Lester Munson, who's principal at government relations firm BGR Group and senior fellow at the National Security Institute in Washington, D.C. Lester, thank you for waiting for me. As for next moves, with the American government, is Donald Trump done now? Because we tend to notice over this side of the pond that he gets bored very quickly with things. Is this his moment done? He's done now, and he'll hand it off to Witkoff or to J.D. Vance, or believing that it's over now and the peace talks can happen, or will he instill himself deeper into wanting to be seen as this great Nobel Peace Prizing god?
Boy, Petrie, I'd lose a lot of money if I bet on any of my predictions regarding Donald Trump.
Fair enough.
So I'm reluctant to predict. I think you're right. He kind of jumps from issue to issue and looks to win, kind of win the day, a little bit of a day trader on politics. He wants to win the chyron on Fox News or even on CNN sometimes. He likes the New York Times to be talking about him, even if it's in a negative way. He likes to be in 3 or 4 stories on the front page, I suspect. But also he's, this is, unlike the last American president, one who is very involved in all of the decisions that are coming out of the administration. He is the decider. He is the one making the policy. He is consulting people. He is, I think, one of the really interesting things about Donald Trump that I think people don't realize is he is in constant communication with members of Congress. Now, that sounds like no big deal, and maybe it's something that happens all the time to folks who aren't here in the swamp like I am in Washington, D.C. But Barack Obama, brilliant man, magnetic in his way, hated talking to members of Congress, didn't like it, didn't really like having around, did it because he had to. Donald Trump loves the back and forth with other policymakers and other people involved in the process. He wants to be the dominant personality for sure, but he wants to be checking in with people, certainly Republicans on Capitol Hill and even some Democrats, people who are on television, people who write things that are influential, people who are involved in this kind of broad public policy conversation that happens in Washington. Donald Trump is in touch with people. He is excited and engaged and wants to be the difference maker. I'm not endorsing every single thing he does as brilliant or anything, but this is a different approach than the Joe Biden administration or the Obama administration.
I mean, you say that, and yet Congress, there is some question as to whether his move against Iran was legal because he didn't get congressional support for it. And also his own Tulsi Gabbard, he basically just dismissed her as not knowing what she's talking about, and seems to have listened more closely to what Benjamin Netanyahu said about Iran having bombs. So he may want to talk to them, but does he want to listen to them?
Well, yes, I think he does. And I think sometimes it's the manner in which you do it. I suspect Tulsi Gabbard's sin was going public and doing that video and making the case on the outside and kind of posing a little bit on her own rather than going directly to the president or having him come to her in some way. I'm not sure there's a real relationship of trust there because of the modality. I personally am much more persuaded by the Netanyahu view that Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon and was very close to having one and would be a very dangerous thing, much more so than the Gabbard view. I think the Netanyahu view has more credibility. On the legality issue, I will say this, I was the staff director of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for a few years. This was one of the primary issues in our jurisdiction was the war powers in the Constitution for Congress and if Congress legislated, usually an authorization for the use of military force, it went through the committee that I work for. I don't think the president needed an AUMF or a declaration of war to do what he did in Iran. There was an ongoing conflict between the U.S. and Iran that has been going on for years. It is a low-level conflict, occasionally costs lives. During the Iraq War, Iran was directly responsible for killing 600 Americans. So the president can make a pretty good case using his constitutional powers as commander-in-chief that he had the authority to do this. I think that's a fair case. I will say, too, and this is where I agree with some of the Democrats, it would be better if he had gone to Congress and gotten a specific authorization to do this. That is a better long-term policy. It will make his efforts stronger, more bipartisan. It will, in the end, get more support from the American people. The partisan approach, kind of keeping Democrats at arm's length, not briefing them in the usual way, is going to engender some partisanship. I think that's done on purpose because this partisanship actually helps the president with his base. And frankly, it helps Democrats with their base as well. There are a bunch of Democrats in Congress who would have liked to have openly supported the strike on Iran. Trust me when I say this. But because of the incredible pressure inside their party to be opposed to everything Donald Trump does, they couldn't really say it that way in public. So they hid behind this idea that it was unconstitutional or he needed to consult or needed to do these things. So that's the crazy situation of American politics right now, where bipartisanship is actually some sort of demonstration of weakness, or it's just not the smart political play. And that's very regrettable in my view. And I think is a big, is basically what you're seeing, this name calling and nastiness and kind of just arguing for the sake of argument stuff that you get out of Washington. This is very much part of all of that, and that is unfortunate.
Just very briefly, if you can, is Pete Hegseth the man for the job as Defense Secretary?
You know, I watched his. He's certainly an unusual candidate to be secretary. He does not have the normal qualifications. He's got some weak spots. He's also done some pretty good work for the President of the United States. I just, in my work life as a lobbyist, I have seen some of the stuff he did in foreign countries. He is a very politically savvy individual who can handle things well for the president and for the American people. I don't know that he's perfect at his job. I don't know how long he's going to last. But I will tell you, based on my experience, without getting too specific, I have seen him do good things in the field, and I think he brings a perspective to that job and to this kind of anti-elitist approach of this administration that serves a purpose and can be of benefit in the long run. I personally don't think I would have picked him if I had been the president.
Yeah, and like you, I'm not sure I'd take a bet on how long any of his team will last, to be honest with you, after the last time. Lester, thank you. That was absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Lester Munson there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you, and with me is Amy Fisher. She's here to look at the newspapers for tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Tuesday. Already, right out the gate. It's because I'm absolutely concentrating on what's going on around the world at the moment. Amy, we are now in a really odd situation, it would seem, with what's going on in the Middle East, because we've been talking about this Iranian attack in Doha, but there were British troops there too. But we haven't responded as a country to the fact that there were British members there as well. We seem to be are we trying to play both sides, ride two horses, or are we being diplomatically brilliant when Lammy is asked whether he agrees with the legalities of what America did, and he just says nothing?
Okay, so look, I'm sort of slightly not going to answer your question by saying all week it's been so difficult hearing on this news about what is going on in the Middle East, and I did a weird kind of reassuring myself by kind of have kept thinking back to the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War, and gosh, at least they didn't spill over into being a third world war, so maybe this isn't going to spill into a third world war, and who's got nuclear weapons and who doesn't. So that was kind of a non-answer to what you first asked me, but I think the lack of a clear response from the government, our government, is slightly odd when they clearly aren't making a side. That's not necessarily surprising for a few days or weeks. Britain is still supplying Israel with a certain amount of munitions at the same time as saying, well, Israel, you kind of are going a bit far, by the way. So yes,
and we've
I
also provided them with air cover.
They are trying to ride two horses, and maybe this is going to make them pick a side.
But it seems that a couple of things occurred to me here. After the Cobra meeting last week, we didn't get an announcement as to what had been discussed. We know...
By the way, nothing ever gets discussed at Cobra, by the way.
No, I can imagine.
Everyone sits around, so people know what Cobra meetings are. I mean, they're terribly serious, but Cobra means Cabinet Office Briefing Room 1.
Or briefing room A.
Or A.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally...
That's literally what I mean. It's so unglamorous.
You genuinely go down there and you're sort of all like, oh, well, no, I just thought it was a very silly amount of excitement. You sort of go down there because something horrible has happened, and you sit there and go, it's a very small, sweaty meeting room.
Yeah.
We could have done this in the Home Office.
Yeah.
So nothing really happens at Cobra meetings would be my first point.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because we don't really get any information out. And at the time, we were waiting here to find out if Starmer had given America any direct help in terms of allowing them to mount a sortie from British territory in Cyprus. So we weren't told any of that, whether they had agreed or hadn't agreed. As it turned out, the stealth bomber that America had could come from Missouri directly. I'd be refueled twice, a 48-hour flight each way. So quite extraordinary bit of technology. But is that because we denied them the right to take off from our landing strips, or is that because Donald Trump decided to go it completely alone, or we have no idea? Do you think as a former comms person, how much should be communicated to the public in these instances? Because I feel that nothing being communicated is probably more dangerous than something.
So what's been not communicated here is an absence of belief, okay? Because there's a right and wrong. No, actually, that's black and white. I do believe the government should be giving a more clear indication of, like, well, we're not going to just let either side sort of bomb each other. We're going to pick a side.
Yeah.
And once you pick a side and make a clear argument for it, people are still obviously going to disagree with that. There has been no peace in the Middle East for hundreds of years, and I don't believe it's going to be, sort of solved in the next week or so. But the absence of making a clear line of choice or argument for who you are backing, it's the absence of that here, which is what's so woody and what is so frustrating for people. And that is what bothers me about this government. They don't sort of want to say anything about anybody, and it's all then so woody. And even David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, he's so but no, but then this and this and this and this. And you're like, well, look, I get it's all very difficult. No sane person thinks any of these things are easily explained. But please say something a bit clearer.
Let us know how much we are expected to be involved in this. That is all. You know, if Starmer would stand up and say, look, just to explain it to you, you know, America can't do this without our permission. We're not going to give that permission, by the way, or we are going to give that permission.
Or we are going to give it in a qualified way.
Yeah.
But give any of that, not just do this bloviating, yeah, but no. I mean, that's no way to kind of run. It's not even diplomacy. It's just the absence of anything that you can kind of sort of understand at all.
Oh, sorry, I've just got some. Well, I don't know if it's what it means in full, but it's from Donald J. Trump on his Truth Social, which is the way he does things now. He said, congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran will have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, there will be an official end to the 12-day war, will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful on the assumption that everything works out it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, and God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world. There endeth the statement by Donald Trump.
Okay. I'm so sorry, I was distracted by the laughter I could just hear in the production.
Yeah.
In the production room. But so in that first sentence, that it's been fully agreed between to start in 6 hours' time. So does that mean that for the next 6 hours they're still bombing each other?
Well, presumably it might take 6 hours for
to stop all the
missiles. Some of them are a bit slower. Some of the drones are a bit slower. They have got to go quite a long way. They've got to go across.
Right.
Quite a few. They've got to go across Iraq, haven't they? So maybe that's what he means by that. They will have wound down and complete their in-progress final missions. This is a ceasefire, though, in order for talks to happen, presumably. This isn't the end of the 12-day war. Yeah. It's a ceasefire, not a ending peace.
Okay, well, I guess a ceasefire is better than nothing, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is, yeah. But the question is always going to be, what does the peace look like? I mean, peace isn't just the stopping of shooting at each other. That is about a long-term solution to what Iran says it wants to see, the end and the total destruction of Israel. And Israel wants a regime change, and I don't know what America wants, but it is...
Well, look,
it's fascinating. If this is true, it's very interesting.
I think I can say with the least confidence ever, well done for Donald Trump getting involved in this, because wasn't he meant to have negotiated a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia about 6 months ago? Yeah.
The thing is, though, he will see this as his involvement in this, and him being, you know, what he says, peace through force or peace through strength. And look, if this has worked in order to create a peaceful situation, then credit to America for doing that.
Yes.
But my suspicion is that there are opposing things wanted from these countries, that Iran just wants to continue, and Iran now will want a nuclear weapon because they've been so annihilated by Israel. Israel wants regime change. I just don't see where these two are going to meet. That is my concern, and it may be too early to call to the end of this war.
Sorry, Petrie, are you possibly suggesting that Donald Trump saying a thing on Truth X, declaring that he sorted out all the world's ills, is not actually a state of affairs?
Possibly. I might be suggesting that.
I'm sorry to be so flippant, but that's why
there may be more to it than Donald Trump thinks.
No, but that's why I brought in, that Ukraine and Russia, because Donald, he does this. There's a big fanfare. I'm going to sort all this out. Yeah. I'm going to march in. I'm going to be the guy. And you kind of get somewhat excited because you don't. No one wants people to fighting and that kind of thing. And then, a few minutes later, literally, with Ukraine and Russia, you go, well, it's still worse. Really messed up, isn't it? And he's literally like, and this is what Donald Trump, he's the, big old bully, or the biggest guy in the playground, who sort of marches in, declares something, everybody thinks it's going to be the way it is. And you know what, look, 2 months later, there was the worst drone attack in Ukraine over the weekend, and there has been in the whole of the entire 2-3 years war. And so it's not really that he didn't do anything, it's kind of worse than it was before. And Trump has just gone, oh, I was going to sort it out, I tried for a bit, actually I decided I couldn't quite be bothered.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying earlier that he appears to get bored very quickly.
This is what I mean. He just sort of goes and goes, oh, yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. I'm going to try and enforce something, and it doesn't quite work, and he just walks off. It's like the latest toy that he broke, right?
Mm. Well, I mean, this will play well to his base. That is the thing.
Sure, MAGA, yeah. Sure.
They will go, see, he's the peace president. He's created peace in the Middle East, which we know is not a thing. Right, currently. And also it does depend on, I mean, you have the Iranian-backed militia in Iraq and places like that. It really does depend if they decide to take their own revenge on American bases or God forbid, on UK bases. It really, I think it's naive to think that this is over. That's what I, having looked at the Middle East over years.
Were you?
No, I wasn't actually in the Middle East.
Okay.
But these things don't just go out because Donald Trump says they have.
So that's the sort of thing. There are UK and then US bases all over these places, where if somebody wanted to take a revenge attack,
be very easy to do so.
It wouldn't take very much at all, and suddenly we go from the phrase is flash to bang. Very quickly things become very hot, and we're all talking about, and then
this is a tinderbox. This is
the really flash to bang, right? Yeah. It's just not that much for it all to
hardly anything.
Kind of blow up, and we are talking about people's lives, because this is the thing, like, everyone's been so used to there not being peace in the Middle East, since the 60s, 70s? So, we always sort of know that somebody over in the Middle East is always arguing with somebody. It's been like that for 40 or 50 years.
Well, Israel was quite, Iran was quite sort of settled in the 70s before America got involved.
Yes, indeed, and then the very particular Ayatollah changed things. They're very sort of rather liberal one, actually, in the 70s. But then this has just brought into such sharp relief that, no, when stuff happens over somewhere, by the way, it quite quickly has a reaction somewhere over else. Here.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I think it is naive to think this is just Iran and Israel and
it's
America.
It's all the spillover. All the spillover everywhere, and if you talk to sort of younger people, because this, by the way, will be the first. If you speak to people in their kind of 20s, this is the first war they know about, because they don't know about the first or second Gulf War.
No.
This is the first time they've had to look at the world and go, oh wow, like
there's a Middle East. Yeah.
There's a Middle East, countries fight each other, this is really scary. And so when you speak to people in their late teens, early 20s, they're like, oh my goodness, oh, this means something might happen here. And you're like, yeah, this is what the world being quite an unstable place means. And
I mean, the concern, I think, for people in this country would be the idea of any terror attacks or any revenge being eked out from people who want to be martyrs to the Iranian cause, and America as well. It should, I think, be concerned about that happening in America. I wouldn't obviously not wish it upon anybody, but the risk of terrorism now, I think, is extremely high in America anyway.
You know, the clock. You know, the Daily Mail loves to do these stories about how, the risk of a terrorist attack in this country is always at 5 minutes to midnight, and they do that kind of clock. I mean, it's past the clock now.
Yeah.
I mean, any time. I don't mean to sound like a sort of literal doomsday person, but any time I get on a bus or the tube, it's gone past that. It does not take very much, let alone anybody with any kind of forethought and planning, to just get on the tube with some kind of homemade bomb or whatever to...
Yeah, I mean, the security services, thank goodness, in this country, thwart these plans if they are planned. I mean, that's the thing.
And as they always say, Kevin kind of always says, look, it only takes us to be lucky once. Sorry, I've done that wrong. The way around. He said it takes us to be on the ball the whole time. It only takes them to be lucky once, and it's just lucky, not through anybody not being diligent or on top of their game. Like literally, some guy can walk on the tube with a homemade bomb.
Yeah, it's really scary, and this is I think that is something that perhaps they will be discussing at Cobra is to maybe to protect us from that possibility. I've got to take a very quick break, but Amy and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and it is good to have your company with me, Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. Let's have a look at the newspapers now, Amy, for Tuesday. The Times, hardly surprising that every single paper actually is looking at the situation in the Middle East. They appear to be behind the curve. This is the pain of working in a newspaper. You've got to go to print at some point, and just when you've gone to print, the news changes. Trump has said Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire. All news organisations are quoting Donald Trump on this. We haven't had any direct information from Israel or Iran at this stage, but you know, he's saying it's been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire, which will start officially in about 6 hours, 12 hours, and then 24 hours. I'm not quite sure why those times, but the Times saying Iran fires missiles at US bases in the Middle East. As far as I know, it was only one base. It was also said that it attacked an American base in western Iraq, but we've had no confirmation of that. In fact, I saw a reporter there who said that this base has been hit, so we're not sure about that. The thing is that, again, we don't know if that was Iran directly, if it was hit in Iraq, or whether it was the Iranian-backed militia in Iraq. But they're saying that two bases have been hit. We've only been really responding to one in Qatar.
So yeah, all the papers, almost universally. I guess we might call the Sun later, which has taken a strange view of the world. But yeah, it's a very fast-moving situation. I think the only thing that we sort of do know is there has been this tit for tat, and then Donald Trump appearing to declare on a social media platform that apparently things are kind of over, which I guess is the one thing we all sort of want to cling on to, right? Because that's been the real fear for the last week, is that everything would be so escalating. So I think whatever newspapers we're looking at on Tuesday morning are possibly going to be quite behind the curve.
Yeah.
In insofar as how much is being agreed, and that hopefully people aren't bombing each other. But that's not to say that anything is over, because, well, as you said, these things don't get agreed quickly, right?
I mean, Israel has made a point of not just bombing military installations, but also attacking the regime and itself. And there was the prison...
And delighting in putting out how many leaders...
that they killed. Yeah, they could track them in real time,
yes.
etc. But they got into trouble with France earlier on, the Israelis, because they bombed the jail, which houses political prisoners, and a Revolutionary Guard command centre. And the French said, look, this is completely out of order, because we've got people in that. We've got prisoners hostage, they've been taken hostage, or whatever they're saying. And of course we had Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe in that prison, and she said she was sickened when she heard that prison had been bombed. But it seems to have been a deliberate act by Israel to sort of undermine the regime.
We said this is the thing that Israel likes to claim, which is, on the one hand, they love to say our bombs are so targeted.
Yeah.
No civilians would get harmed. And on the other hand, like the scenario you've just explained, they'll then go, oh, well, there might be some collateral damage.
Yeah.
So with actually even getting into the specifics of what Israel was bombing, it does seem to have, I want to have my piece of cake over here and then also eat it over here, because yeah, you can't be that targeted, no one's been harmed, and then go, oh, well, yes, sometimes we do other things and people do get harmed.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. But Israel is not. I mean, I just don't want to sound like I'm just not believing that it. But Israel, Iran has declared. In fact, the Ayatollah himself said by 2025 Israel will cease to exist. That was the plan. I think he said that back in 2015. Yeah. I think it was then, or 2005, that by 2025 Israel will cease to exist. They've made it their policy that Israel cannot exist, right? And Israel, and also, you know, death to Israel, death to the Zionist, and death to America. That is what Iran has been saying, and look, Iran has been desperately let down by America on many fronts, many times, but and I don't see why they would trust America because of it. Not to say that I support the Iranian regime, because it's hell. I mean, it's just awful. But how are these two entrenched views going to meet to discuss peace? And if peace is even possible, how long will that last? Is the Ayatollah going to say, I've changed my mind on Israel, you can exist? Is Israel going to say, look, we trust you, we believe that you're not going to do anything against us? I'm just really concerned that Donald Trump has sort of brought this down to really simple language and really simple terms.
Which can't be done. So it needs to be realpolitik, which is literally like, sort of peace in the Middle East somewhat existed in the 80s and 90s through the sheer fact of no one pushing the actual points.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of went, Gaza, it's grim, this side wants this bit, this side wants the other bit. You can have all the intellectual, you can have, I wouldn't even say turn a blind eye, but like, let's not push the point. Neither side is going to get what they, quote, want, or intellectually, theoretically, theologically believe that they are entitled to. The only way is just somewhat coexist.
Yeah, but now that, can we go back?
Now this has all been almost literally blown up again, and there is no resolution to it. So
I can't see one. I can't see. I mean, Iran would have to agree to inspectors. They would have to agree to people coming into the country. Notoriously, don't allow anybody in. They would have to agree to having inspections. They would have to agree to explaining where the enriched uranium has gone. I just don't see it happening. But that's what they would have to agree to in order for a sustainable peace between Israel and Iran.
Yes, and then we don't even really need to talk about what Israel wants. This is what I mean about, I think there's just going to have to be some almighty fudge somewhere where everyone just sort of goes, yeah, look, we came really close to World War III here. I don't think that the planet wants that, do they? We really don't like each other, but can we just back off for a minute?
And we haven't talked about the fact that Israel has got nuclear weapons without being part of the nuclear proliferation.
Yes, but everyone's known that since the 1980s.
I know, but it doesn't make it right, does it? That they're not even signed up to any of the things that the rest of the world are signed up to. But everybody thinks that Israel is, they're the good guys and they won't do anything bad with it.
I don't think people think Israel are the good guys. I think there's an understanding that. Well, I think everyone's known that Israel's had the nuclear weapons since, the late 70s.
But they've had 80s. No inspections, there's been no opening up to that fact. It's always just been known, it's not been known.
But I think, as far as I understand it, I think the difference has been that Israel has had the nuclear weapons for protection. They've never looked to go outward with them. But that's not me trying to make a case for Israel. It's just that's what I've understood it as being. Whereas maybe,
but Iran could say the same thing.
Well, I think it's been that Iran might have a more expansionist. They want the nuclear weapons to be looking outward to gain further control, whereas with Israel it's just been like, well, no, we've got them because we don't want anybody else to mess with us. But I'm willing to entirely.
I'm sure that's why the international communities have not really paid as much attention to them as I think they should. But I also think that anybody could use that argument and just say I've only got them for self-defence.
Well, I don't think there are many people that could use the argument that we as a people, Jewish people. But in the 20th century, somebody tried to annihilate us. So once we got our own landmass, we're trying to protect ourselves. I think that is a particularly unique circumstance.
I do think that historically compelling argument, and indeed. But Vice President J.D. Vance has said that Iran is now incapable of building a nuclear weapon with the equipment they have because we destroyed it. There is no confirmation of that whatsoever. We also know that lorries were seen outside Fordo, presumably removing scientists and computers and uranium to secure secret areas. I wouldn't underestimate Iran's ability to continue with a
I wouldn't underestimate it, but I wouldn't overestimate it either. I mean, like, literally, do we not remember back to
Iraq and weapons of mass destruction?
Which literally, the dodgy dossier, which we knew to be dodgy some years after the event, you know, they had these like photographs which were literally like a mound of earth.
I know.
But at the time, we were told, oh, that's a bunker.
Yeah.
There's something there. A truck went there, so that means it's moving this thing. And at the time, in the early 2000s, we went, oh my God, Saddam, goodness me, and only.
But Israel has been saying that Iran is close to having nuclear weapons for decades. 2 weeks away. It's always been 2 weeks away. So I don't.
It's been 2 weeks a day for about 14 years.
I know. So how close really were they? And I suspect they weren't as close as is being told to us. But also, nobody wants them to have a nuclear weapon. But I think we've just proved to them that secretly they perhaps ought to have one. I think that's what it looks like. That in the future, Iran is going to be hell-bent on developing it for their own protection.
I think they're probably going to be more hell-bent because of what's happened over the last few days. Because
I agree.
Why
wouldn't you?
Yeah, because they've basically had a big slap in the face.
Yeah.
And
if they'd had a nuclear weapon, perhaps that wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
Trump wouldn't have attacked.
But to your point, I dispute how close they probably were in the first place. I don't particularly believe they had one.
No, I don't, and I don't believe they were that close. It's just Israel was saying that, oh, they're 2 weeks away, and they've been saying that for years. Right, we've got to take another quick break, but we'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with me, Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The Times also on the front page talking about millionaires to flee the UK in record numbers. Britain is on track to lose a record 16,500 millionaires. Disgusting that we had that many in the first place this year, as tax increases and falling economic confidence drive the wealthy residents abroad.
Well, you know, it's the whole trickle-down thing, right? We do need, you know, people who have a bunch of money because then they go out and spend it in shops and restaurants, and it's the whole sort of, you know, Margaret Thatcherite trickle-down kind of stuff. So I don't think it's a good thing that they're fleeing. Personally, rather they'd stayed and would be taxed a bit more. But no, it's not a good thing that they're going, because they say the trickle-down effect on, dare I say it, sort of local high streets and hospitality and other service industries, but
that's always been the argument.
Where an awful lot of people in the UK are employed.
That has always been the argument, hasn't it? But trickle-down economics has pretty much been debunked. We know that rich people, they do spend money, but they're actually quite canny with their money, and a lot of their money is held overseas, so they're not really paying that much tax here anyway, if you are a millionaire. But they're talking here about people with liquid assets of $1 million, which is £740,000. That's not so rich as they're going to be
No, it's not an enormous amount of money, actually, is it?
I mean, I wouldn't mind it.
No, well, no, neither, nor would I.
But it's not that. I mean,
no, by
definition, it's not.
But I sort of genuinely think when people, because I think people, you are seeing it on high streets all over the place. I do think when people stop going out and spending money, and by spending money, I mean, you know, going out on a Tuesday night and having a pizza and a bottle of wine. I'm not talking about like spending vast amounts of money. I'm talking about just high streets, and again the service industry, which Britain is so reliant on. It you know, very quickly you do get these kind of dead areas.
Yeah. No, it would be better if they stayed. But I mean, if they, what can you do? You know, you can't stop taxing them just because they'll threaten to move if you do.
Well, and also the thing about taxes. I mean, and we probably shouldn't get into this, but I have deep principles against, you know, inheritance tax, capital gains tax, and, you know, tax on money when you've already paid tax, you've invested it. Don't be taxed again on it.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. Well, we presumably will have this discussion maybe in a few months when Rachel from Accounts brings forward her budget, which I assume is going to be horrible for everyone.
Yeah, it's going to attack everybody. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail. So whose side are you on, Keir? This is what we were talking about earlier, is that Sir Keir Starmer risks being marginalised on the world stage last night after failing to back Donald Trump's strikes against Iran. He hasn't not backed them. I mean, that's...
Well, he just hasn't. I mean, he just hasn't said anything.
He's just being all woolly as usual, isn't he? The FT, Tehran unleashes missile assault on key American military base in Qatar, and Trump's erratic policy shifts heighten Europeans' fear for gold stored in the US. Okay, that's not something I have to worry about. The Independent, Iran strikes back with missile attack on US base in Qatar. British nationals urged to shelter in place as Doha intercepts missiles. We know now that this was very much choreographed and agreed to as a face-saving exercise for Iran, and things seem to have moved on now with the ceasefire agreed, we think. We hopefully get some confirmation on that from either Israel or Iran. Congratulations, world, it's time for peace. That's Donald Trump. I think that's incredibly naive, but there you go. The Metro, topple the Ayatollahs. An Israeli airstrike killed hundreds of Iran's secret police, who it said forced citizens to follow Islamic codes. On the same day, Donald Trump suggested regime change in the Republic. It's never gone well when we've interfered in regime change, has it? Can you think of one area where it's gone well?
No. So look, if you're going to do
Saddam Hussein,
if you're going to do big stuff like this, just do it. And hope things get better. Don't sort of brief it as though... Because also, I think about this front page, they wanted to do something better with topple the Ayatollahs. Do you see what I mean? There's so many T's and so many O's and so many P's. They sort of wanted there to be some kind of alliterative outcome for the headline, and clearly the headline editors went, oh no, we'll just put that. Somebody reading it will get all the P's and the L's and they'll find it funny. But do you understand what I mean?
It's style over substance.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And no, I think once you announce your grand intentions to do something to some other people by a non-democratic means, it does tend not to go that way, even if you were doing it with the best of intentions.
Of course, Donald Trump has posted, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again. MIGA. So that's what he's going for. Whereas J.D. Vance has said it's nothing to do with regime change. So, I don't know. Israeli military has just issued new evacuation warning for residents of 2 areas in Tehran. That's just a post on X. So we have to wait for the 6 hours, presumably, for these things to have happened. The I paper goes with this line, which is interesting. UK is ready to defend our allies. as Iran mounted that attack. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says Britain is now prepared to join military action to defend our allies and partners in the Middle East. Are we getting sucked into something we don't want to be sucked into?
Well, I'm not quite sure where they got their briefing when. Actually, if I can just go up to the top, what is most interesting to me is their campaign revealed Post Office had evidence of second IT scandal dating back 30 years. I think that, because you all remember it, Mr. Bates. So if anyone's reading the I paper today on Tuesday, I think that might be quite something to look into.
That certainly is, actually. It's a good story. It's a really good story. The Eye are very good at doing their investigations.
They
actually.
are, that's why,
Yeah, they really are. Okay, the Sun newspaper has gone with another investigation, taking us for a ride. Boat illegals get food bike jobs within hours of arriving, plus a free hotel room. Channel migrants are working as fast food delivery riders within hours of arriving in the UK while being housed and fed at the taxpayers' expense. They rake in nearly £1,000 a week. Really? Operating from asylum accommodation.
I just feel like the Sun didn't really know what it was doing with this. I mean, does it like illegal immigration? Does it like they're getting jobs? Does it like they're not getting tax for the jobs that they've got? I mean, I just think this front page is a mess, not least in the face of the fact that we have come quite close to World War III.
Yeah, it's an odd. They've got a tiny little bit on the top of the paper about Iran. But there you go. The Mirror taking quite a different stance here. Middle East in turmoil, war games. Again, they're behind the news, which is the pain of working in newspapers. Best will in the world, they can wait as long as they like, but within minutes things can change.
Although I think the Mirror had, I have to say, one of the best photos. I think
it is an amazing photograph. And they're the news there that Dermot Murnaghan has stage 4 prostate cancer.
Gosh.
Which is, I mean, he's a name, isn't he? We've always known grown up with him. I mean, he was ITV, I think, was he Channel 4, Sky? He's just sort of always been there, but he's at stage 4. I think he's 67 years old, at stage 4 prostate cancer, and is now saying that it's urging men to go and get their prostate checked. Such a shame. It must be so devastating to know that is a disease, if caught early enough, is completely.
It's so entirely
manageable.
Yes, if not curable, survivable.
Yeah. I mean, that must be devastating for him. Amy and I are going to take a quick break, but we'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Amy Fisher, who's former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. Before we get on to the Daily Express, I just wanted to draw your attention back to the Independent, if I could, because I missed the top there.
Yep.
The protesters clash with police as government uses terror laws to ban a Palestine action.
Yep.
And this is after they broke into very easily, far too easily, into Brize Norton, where we have the majority of our transport planes. I mean, they, no, there's no excuse for vandalising, property, but if it wasn't for them, I don't think we'd realise just how lax our security is when it comes to one of the most important hubs for transport planes with only one runway. I mean, it could have been a lot worse.
Sure. So I think there's two separate things in that. One is, as you say, the security about the actual planes, and then secondarily, the issue about whether this particular organisation should be sort of classed as terrorists. On the former, mad, lack security.
Terrible.
No one really understands what's going on there. On the second, yes, I personally think they are a little bit extreme, and I'm some sort of.
But is this a knee-jerk reaction? It looks
No,
like a
it's not
knee-jerk reaction to prescribe them.
That's what I mean about it's two separate things. I think it's the first and most important issue should be the security about Brize Norton. Then have the debate, if you want to, about prescribing this particular group as being terrorist or not. And by the way, the bar for that is quite high, because I worked in the Home Office and I know what it is to try and prescribe people. And I personally think this group meets it, by the way. Nothing to do with what they did about, painting the planes and all the rest of it.
I mean, it could have been a lot worse. Somebody could have hidden a bomb there. They could have blown up the runway. Anything.
Exactly, all of that kind of thing. So that's kind of somewhat frustrating that in the coverage the two things are being mashed together, and we need to separate them out, because there should be.
Well, this is again, communication from the government has been so appalling.
There should be much better security around Brize Norton,
around all our
there we go,
communication centres.
Because there's been any number of things online about people then, using Google Maps to look up where other RAF planes might be, or where other. Because obviously we have 3 nuclear submarines, which are always meant to be. Well, at any one time, like 2 are kind of in the water, but sometimes they have to come in to have some maintenance. However, like if you look on Google Maps, I'm not revealing state secrets here. Like if you look on Google Maps, you can find out sort of where they are.
They're going to be at Plymouth or Lossiemouth or wherever.
Exactly, it's not that difficult. So on the one hand, we're talking about issues of absolute national security involving critical national infrastructure. On the other hand, we are talking about terrorist legislation and groups that seem to be propounding some not very nice views, and that's kind of a dynamic thing, which to me is slightly less worrying than, as I say, being able to look up on Google Maps.
Well, being able to just to scooter around aircraft. I mean,
that's what I mean. That's critical national infrastructure, right? It's the standing stuff that the country needs in order to be safe. What political groups are doing, as I say, can sort of be dynamic, and you need to always keep an eye on that. But like, if you can't keep your critical national infrastructure safe, that's a bit frightening.
It is. I mean, it is shocking, actually, that those people were able to go through just a chainmail fence.
Wire cutters.
Wire cutters, and just go in and
wire cutters literally from a hardware store, because I lost the key to I used to lock my bike up, so I had to get you know, why I cut the chain off? Like, it's like 15 quid for like a hardware store. Yeah. You should not be able to break into like an RAF.
No, and immediately be at the aircraft within minutes on an electric scooter, and then to carte blanche be able to spray it without anybody interfering with you. In fact, we wouldn't have seen the image if they hadn't filmed themselves doing it.
Themselves?
Yeah, and then they scoot off.
Paloma Faith, I think it was, saying, oh, well, I'm just doing this because I believe in freedom and happiness. It's like, that's lovely. Yeah, lovely. Please go back to judging Britain's best voice.
Whatever you do. Yeah, I don't get it. It's an extraordinary story, but and they should do better in advising us about who Palestine Action are and why they should be banned.
And the people behind it and who is funding them.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you entirely understandably don't want people in Palestine dying, just that can be one thing. Just be aware of who you're marching for, because that is not a nice group.
Right, fair enough. The Daily Express for Tuesday, the Trump time for peace after Iran's very weak attack. I still can't get over the words that he uses and why he just blatantly seems to be poking the hornet's nest, but there you go. President thanks Tehran for early warning of attacks on US airbase in Qatar. And Tiara Bridge tribute to the late Queen. This is something that we haven't got the pages, but a Tiara Bridge, it seems, is going to be built for the Queen, which is quite a nice idea. I think they're also going to do a statue of her on horseback.
Yeah.
Again, nice. I mean, that's good.
And also the Queen was just cool, right?
She was cool.
We
liked her.
Just started out.
Yeah, she was all right. The Daily Star. Here we go. We're all going on our glummer holidays. Travel agents are seeing a surge in trips to cooler nations as Brits fly off from the extreme UK heat for a cool down abroad. Where would you go that's cooler?
Norway.
But it's daylight all day round, isn't it, in Norway at this time of the year?
But also this runs in the face of what it is to be British. There are two things we like to complain about. One, queuing. Two, complaining about the weather.
Yeah, it's in our DNA.
So frankly, the whole point is so it's come a bit early this year, but during July and August, we like to stand around in a queue somewhere going, isn't it hot?
It's too hot. I like the sunshine, but it's too hot.
My garden is parched. I'm going to have to get the watering can out.
Yeah, but apparently we are going away on cooler holidays. We're going to cool down abroad. I don't think that's true. Holidaymakers ditch heat wave for big chill.
Are you suggesting that something on the front page of the Daily Star is not true?
Well, they're saying...
Was that what you...
They're saying Liam Gallagher for Prime Minister.
Well,
that could be true.
As I sort of slightly said to your affair, he was my pin-up when I was a teenager. But I don't know why I've just said that, because goodness knows why.
Goodness knows why. Mine was Billy Idol, and he's on the front of one of the other papers, actually. I was so in love with Billy Idol. I just thought he was the absolute
coolest bee's knees.
He really was the coolest. Hey? Oh, it's the eye, is it? Oh, there we go. The eye has got Billy Idol on the...
Where?
Front.
Oh, and no, with the blonde... What?
Yeah, he's not looking as pretty as he used to. There he is. Yeah.
I'm not... Can you read out what it says?
He says, I had sex with 1 million people I didn't know. He was counting. 1. That bedhead must have had so many notches in it that it fell down.
But seriously, the hair.
Oh, he was really cool when he was younger, though. He was very handsome.
This is the one time in my life I've got to feel superior about admitting that I like Liam Gallagher. because you took that and went, I like Billy Idol.
I know, and
then
now
we've just looked at that.
I know, bless him. But I did. He was so pretty
Okay.
when he was younger, but he had sex with 1 million people that he didn't know. Presumably he knew them after he had sex with them.
Well, I think you're going to have to buy the eye and read the interview.
And the other one is Bezos' wedding is proof money doesn't buy taste or class. What a shocker.
I think we knew. I think we knew that.
I think we knew that. Oh dear, you can't win. Amy, thank you very much indeed. I know you're going to go out and buy the Star tomorrow, so you can check up on lovely Liam.
I'm going to buy the eye
To
so I
check
can
up on
read the
Billy
interview
Idol.
with Billy Idol.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, now it's over to you. We will be having a phone in about the defence of this country. And actually, do you feel now that 5% of GDP is okay? Because I asked you this question a few weeks ago when we were going to go up to 3% of GDP, but now by 2035 we've promised NATO that we will be spending 5% of GDP. That goes up from what we spend now, about £57 billion a year, to around about £125 billion a year. Are you more persuaded now you're looking at the state of the world that that is something we should be spending our money on? And while we're looking at the state of the world, do you really believe that Donald Trump has just created peace in the Middle East? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you, and I'm with you for the next hour. And I will be taking your calls about the state of the world at the moment and how you're feeling about it. But first, we're trying to get to the bottom of that Truth Social tweet, or Truth Social, whatever it's called when you Truth Social, Donald Trump put out, claiming that there has been an agreement to a ceasefire. We're getting a few more details on that now. Qatar's Prime Minister has secured Iran's agreement to the US ceasefire proposal in a call with Tehran. Senior Iranian official confirms to Reuters that Tehran is agreeing to Qatar-mediated US proposed ceasefire with Israel. Trump told the emir that Israel had agreed, although we haven't heard directly from Israel at the moment, to a ceasefire, and asked for Qatari help to persuade Iran to also agree. So it's actually a little bit more fluid than perhaps that Truth Social message that Donald Trump put out led us to believe. He said it's been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. He may be a little premature on that, but we are trying to get some more details. He's saying it's been fully agreed by and between complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. I'm not sure that's what I'm reading, but let's talk now to Adam Lucente, correspondent for Al Monitor, an independent Middle East news source. Adam, thank you so much for joining me. Adam, Donald Trump being very positive about this, is he right to be?
He did make the announcement, and it's telling that he did thank the Emir of Qatar about an hour before making this announcement. Of course, there was no immediate confirmation from Iran or Israel, though Iranian media is starting to report on the Truth Social post. The window he indicated of like around 6 hours, where it's not totally clear, but it seems that the war could continue for a small amount of time. That is a significant window because these strikes between Israel and Iran usually happen at night. And just a little while ago, the Israeli Defense Forces issued a warning to residents of part of Tehran because of a pending action. So a lot can happen in that window. And like I said, we haven't had confirmation from Iran or Israel on this ceasefire, but it is hard to believe that the president would, post this if there wasn't an agreement in place. It could also be perhaps a pressure tactic to get them to, make the final agreement on this ceasefire. But, Iran had vowed to continue striking Israel after the U.S. attacks on the nuclear sites over the weekend, and, there have been launches between Israel and Iran very recently. But we're waiting to see what those two countries will say about the announcement.
The idea, though, that a ceasefire indicates the end of the war, is he joining the two things together and expecting to be the end of the war?
So in past, there haven't been so many formal agreements, but in past instances between Israel and Iran, they had the strikes against each other in the spring of last year, and then in the fall of last year. And after that, after those two rounds, respectively, there was a bit of calm for another period of several months after that. So it's possible that if agreement is reached, it's possible that there could really be a ceasefire in effect, if not a ceasefire in effect that would last for, some amount of time. And, it's worth noting that before Trump made this announcement on Truth Social, there were indications that this conflict could be winding down. Iran reported that some of their missiles hit the U.S. base in Qatar, but Trump said there were no casualties, and he said that the damage was little. And he even said that Iran had warned the U.S. before this strike, which seems to indicate that both sides are kind of portraying this as they want. And over the weekend, Iran really downplayed the damage that the U.S. did to the nuclear facilities when the U.S. struck them. And that indicates that, it might be a possible off-ramp for Tehran, allows them to not have to do something so big to the U.S. in response. And, like I said, even back in 2020, when the U.S. killed Iranian Commander Qasem Soleimani, after that, Iran struck U.S. military positions in Iraq. But then after that, there was calm for some period of time. So it is possible we are seeing a de-escalation, not only because of the president's recent post.
What does peace look like between these two mortal enemies? If Iran has publicly spoken about the annihilation of Israel, Israel clearly wants regime change. This is slightly different, isn't it, to what we saw a few months ago, the sort of sorties between Israel and Iran. It seemed to be more controlled there. If they are to sit down and try and have peace talks, what do they look like to you?
The indication we've seen now is that this is a possible ceasefire between Israel and Iran. A longer-term agreement would be quite unlikely between the two countries because of so many issues outstanding between them, all the damage Israel has done to Iran in recent months, in recent weeks, and Iran vice versa. Their strikes on Israeli institutions, buildings, and civilians have been killed on both sides of this, not to all the Iranian commanders that have been killed. And there's just been decades and decades of bad blood between them. So we expect anything beyond a ceasefire, which would merely mean an end to the hostilities for a period of time. A longer-term agreement would not be as likely. And it's also, a lot of this will depend on the U.S. and Iran, their diplomatic efforts. Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi said yesterday that the U.S. had really hindered the diplomacy track when they conducted the strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities. So we're still waiting to see if a nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran is even possible. And if there is a nuclear deal with Iran and the U.S. and other parties like Europe to that agreement, that could, calm down Israel and make them feel that they don't need to continue striking Iran. And it may also make Iran feel that they don't need to strike Israel if they get some sort of sanctions relief that they're satisfied with. So a lot of this will depend on U.S. and Iran.
But presumably any nuclear deal with Iran would include oversight of Iran, which they've notoriously not been particularly interested in. And let's not forget that Donald Trump did tear up the last agreement that Iran had with the US, which seemed to be holding. It seemed to, although be not perfect, was certainly adhered to some degree by Iran. And as soon as that was ripped up, then we saw Iran starting to enrich to greater levels. Can they trust America with a deal? What's the sense in Iran?
So the fact that the U.S. left the deal in 2018 and that Trump was president then and now president now, but even under Biden, across different Iranian administrations, that was something they brought up again and again, that they were, really angered that the U.S. had walked away from that deal. So there's definitely a trust element that is missing on the Iranian side. But the difference now is Iran has been quite significantly weakened, really since October 7th when Hamas launched its attack on Israel. Iran's in a far weaker position now. Their proxy, Hezbollah, their arguably number one proxy, has been really weakened. Hamas has been weakened. The Houthis are still there, and now Iran, just in the last week, has lost so many commanders and so many military sites and capabilities at the hands of Israel. So even though there's not so much trust with Washington, and especially with President Trump, there is the idea that Iran, because they're in a weakened position, might need to agree to some sort of deal with the U.S.
Is this also because Iran has reached out to its allies, such as Russia, possibly China, possibly North Korea, and not got the backing that they expected that they would get from those allies?
That is possible. Iran has a strong energy relationship with China and strong, political and energy ties with Russia. And they're getting along better with the Gulf. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, these countries have all condemned the Israeli strikes on Iran, but they're not necessarily partners of Iran in a traditional sense. Militarily, Iran is very much on its own, of course, with the exception of all their proxies in the region who support them. But like I said, they've all been weakened. So while Iran has political backing and energy ties to many of these countries, in terms of their fight against Israel, they don't necessarily have a ton of support on that front.
The regime in Iran is not one that likes to feel weakened, at least not on the world stage. What are the repercussions for possibly the Iranian people, Iran itself, or for the world going forward? Because it feels like if we beat Iran into the corner, they're gonna behave in a way to get themselves out of that corner.
That is possible. I mean, a lot of what Iran likes to do is save face. They like to portray their attacks on the U.S. and Israel in the way they want to, and there's not really a free media there, although people do have access to information through VPNs and whatnot. But Iran, if they can save face and say that they hit the U.S. and hit Israel hard, then they might be able to sell that to their people. And again, it's not a democracy, but they may be able to sell that to people and say, okay, we did what we did, we got some good hits in, and now we're going to make a deal. And, they're aware that the economy is weak there and that a deal could help, sanctions relief could help them. And, they can look to Syria, which has a terrible economy, but now has a new government and has made all sorts of concessions to the West. And now the economy might be starting to turn around. So Iran may choose to do that route, or they may choose to continue with the hostile actions. We'll see what this announcement leads to.
Any loosening of the grip of the regime in Iran? Because you mentioned Syria there, but of course we saw a regime change occur there. Israel clearly wanting to see a regime change. They've been bombing, the military, the religious police, the prisons, things like that to weaken the regime there. The Ayatollah and cronies got a tight grip on the regime, or could we see that beginning to topple?
So it's difficult to predict, especially with Iran, but it's worth noting that in 2022, there were massive protests and riots against the government there, and it didn't lead to change. And, at the beginning of the current conflict with Israel, there were some statements circling around from Kurdish groups, from Balochi groups, from, different minority groups about, potential, action against the government, but nothing really came of that. So it's difficult to imagine the Islamic Republic just, falling overnight just because of this. But, as Syria told us, anything can really happen, but as of now, they remain in control of their territory.
But has this regime got longevity? It seems to be anachronistic in a way in the region, that a lot of the region is sort of moving forward, economically moving forward, but this is very much a sort of a very backward, if you like, in terms of its religious control over people regime. Has this got longevity?
I think a lot of that will depend on what happens in the coming weeks. I mean, President Pezeshkian, when he was running, he wanted to have negotiations with the West, with the U.S. If they are able to resurrect that and pursue that track with President Trump, then it's possible they have given themselves a bit of time to have economic relief, and that could calm things down there. But in terms of longevity, it's very difficult to predict. I mean, Iran, they don't have a free media. But there are very active opposition groups there. Yeah. But I would just be skeptical of anyone who's saying that the regime will imminently collapse. We really just don't know.
And finally, Adam, what do you see as the next step? Where do we see these talks? Are they going to take place in Qatar? It seems that they are trusted by Iran, that maybe these talks will happen in Qatar, and do you expect them to go on for a long time?
The places to look for are Qatar and also Oman. Oman has hosted talks between U.S. and Iranian officials recently, and there was hope that they would continue. They've now been paused for some time, given the Israel-Iran conflict and then the U.S. strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities. But Qatar and Oman are the two obvious choices, are countries that would be in a position, having good relations with both, to mediate. And it really does seem that Qatar is ascending, especially in the eyes of Trump. Like I said, he thanked the Emir of Qatar, Thani, before he made this announcement of the Israel-Iran ceasefire. So Qatar could play a very large role in whatever comes next between the three countries involved.
And has American strength brought an end to this conflict?
Has American what?
Strength.
What do you mean?
America bombing Iran and threatening more. Is that what was material in ending this? If indeed,
I do believe that had to have played a factor, yes. I mean, like I said, it's hard to tell how much damage was really done from these U.S. strikes, with Trump claiming they were enormously successful and Iranian officials really downplaying it. But certainly the U.S. has a major technological military advantage over Iran. The fact that they could fly something across the world and refuel in the air. I mean, Iran can't even dream of doing this, and they're not doing well against Israel, which is a far smaller country. So Iran is definitely aware of their limits vis-a-vis the U.S.
Great to talk to you, Adam. Thank you very much indeed. Adam Lucente, their correspondent for Al Monitor, an independent Middle East news source. Going to take a break and then back to your calls.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you. Senior Iranian officials have confirmed to Reuters that Tehran is agreeing to Qatar mediated US proposed ceasefire with Israel. So that's the latest. They've confirmed that Tehran has agreed to that Qatari mediated US proposed ceasefire with Israel. So that's the very latest. But for you, 5% of GDP, that's what we're being told at the moment. That is where we're going to be in about 10 years' time, so 2035. That we will be spending 5% of GDP on defence. We know already that it's going up to 3%, and we knew that was going to happen. NATO has insisted now that all European countries, including us, must increase our spending to 5%. This, of course, was kicked off by Donald Trump, who was saying that the other countries have got to be spending 5%. He doesn't spend 5%, but he's insisting that we do. And I don't think it's a bad thing that he's told us we've got to spend more. I think we always should have spent more. But so that's where we are at the moment. I'm asking you, actually, if you think that is now you can see how quickly the world can change and how suddenly scary things can get if you now agree that is a good thing to do. And we just heard in the bulletin as well at the top of the hour that the Ukrainian officials are saying that Russia will attack a NATO country within the next 3 to 5 years. So although Russia denies that, of course, but I'm just wondering if you think, look, actually, now I've seen this, it's getting pretty close, we need to be spending more money. Grace is in London. Hi, Grace, how are you?
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm very well, thank you. What do you think about 5% of GDP?
I think it's balmy. I mean, I thought the government was proposing to be kind of fiscally responsible and to make sense of how they use taxpayers' money and stop mishandling the economy in the way that the previous government had. And suddenly they think they're going to suddenly get 80 billion out of where? I mean, it makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, it is a massive increase. And I suppose that we'll hear from Rachel, won't we, from accounts, who'll say that we need to pay more tax in order to fund this.
I don't see how it's doable. It's just not rational, and I don't understand. I know I bang on about this all the time, but I don't care. I'm still going to. I don't understand why it is that there's money for weapons, but the money that's being spent on feeding the world's most impoverished people who are literally starving to death, who don't even have food banks or a benefit system at all, how we don't have money to feed them at the cost of about 10 pence a meal, or to provide infant vaccinations. The government's dragging its feet over whether it's going to keep on funding Gavi. We don't have money for that, but we do have money for weapons. And surely the more weapons we have, the more weapons Iran or other opponents will feel they want to have. And so there'll be more money spent on weapons, and it will just go on and on. It feels kind of like boys with their toys just wanting to buy new shiny things to blow each other up with.
And then they all need updating, of course, as well.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I should stress when I say boys with their toys, I don't think that all men think like this. I'm just being
no. But look, the defence industry is so powerful. In terms of lobbying, in terms of every aspect of politics, and you've got a situation here where there's so much. I mean, just follow the money. There's people going, well, there's no money in feeding starving people. There's no money. I'm talking. How the oligarchs probably talk, not how I think. But there is that sense of, capitalism is eating itself at the moment, and they've got to find more markets to keep capitalism going. I've been reading a lot recently about the collapse of capitalism and democracy for various reasons, fairly obvious reasons. But capitalism always reaches a point where there are no new markets. right? There are no new markets. It's saturated, and then it begins to implode. It begins to collapse in on itself. And with defence spending, there's always a market.
I mean, we talk sometimes about British values or Western values, and I think it's kind of presumed that the West is morally superior and therefore it should be bossing other countries around. And I do think that there are Western values that are superior to values in some other parts of the world. But I think that we are in the West, and have been for the last, I don't know, century or so, abandoning values that we maybe held previously. Ideas such as that we should be ideally self-sacrificial, we should aim towards concern for humanity rather than just ourselves. We've abandoned those values gradually in favour of capitalism. I think that is the religion of the West now, and it's ultimately, I don't know, a zero-sum game. It's not going to, bring about the best for humanity if people are just striving after more and more wealth and weapons. And as many diplomats and people who know plenty about this said at the time that Rachel Reeves decided to cut the aid budget and force more children out of school and to starve, when you reduce spending on positive things, you just increase the likelihood of more tension down the line. There'll be some boys who feel that they have no choice but to join, a jihadi group because they've got no other way of putting food on the table, and they're forced into it and handed a gun by Al-Shabaab or whoever. You increase the likelihood of conflict when
it's incredibly short-sighted.
Yeah.
It's incredibly short-sighted, but I've just got a message here from Simon in Bray, and this is a common thought, and that is I'd rather spend 5% on NATO than on foreign aid. But many people believe that.
Maybe he should do some maths. The current aid budget after Sunak cut it is only 0.5% of GDP, not 5% of GDP. So it's already only a tenth of what the government has now decided it wants to aim toward. So you could not
I think it's 12 billion a year, but some of that is already, I think 4 billion a year is going towards hotels in this country for asylum seekers.
Yeah, so some people who make these arguments, they don't look at the maths at all. You could not get to 5% even if you cancel the whole aid budget. And as I've just been saying, you're just going to increase the likelihood of conflict further down the line. But my personal concern is for humanity and human beings. Why would you rather spend money on guns rather than feeding starving people? I personally can't get my head around that. But additionally, as I said, it's short-sighted. It's going to lead to more conflict later down the line. And what are we defending? What are the Western enlightened values that we are defending if all we really care about is being able to blow other people up and not about concern for those who are vulnerable or concern for human beings who are in need? I thought that was part of the whole Judeo-Christian thing. Well, it is part of the Judeo-Christian thing, but people like certain politicians will claim that we have Judeo-Christian values, but then they ignore them and they just think we need to be tough, and that's actually completely not the values that we should be aiming towards. It's
well, yeah.
brutality.
I've said this for a long time, and that is that I think humanity had its chance, and we've muffed it up completely.
Yeah.
We're turning against each other, not towards each other. There's no empathy left anymore. Like you said, it's all individual. I deserve this, I deserve that, as opposed to looking outside of ourselves and seeing, look, we can live on fairly. That we don't need all this stuff, and actually other people need stuff as well. But then I get accused of being a tree hugger, so I'll just carry on hugging my trees and living in my fantasy world. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Grace. Thank you very much indeed. Grace is saying that 5% of GDP on defence is unrealistic and actually slightly immoral. Just before I go to a break, it's competition time. Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th, so it's quite close. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you £5,000 worth of spending money. Here's everything you need to know about how to enter.
And I did. You have to be over 8.
What happened? Don't know. Don't know. There are details. Hopefully we'll bring you those details a little bit later on. We can check the recording is working. It was going to give you all the details. Have we got a printout of those details? Perhaps I can give them. If not, there's something wrong with our competition. But anyway, I will try to let you know what those details are, because that is really close, isn't it? July 19th. So if you want to get to see the Oasis, I should have done that with Amy, because she's a bit of a fan of Liam. Let's play it again. Let's see if it works this time. Fingers crossed. Here's all the details that you need to win those Oasis tickets. No, it's not going to work. This is live broadcasting, people. This is what you have to put up with. If you bring the details in to me, I'll read them. So right, let's take a break while we do that. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It's Petrie here with you, and I'm with you through until 1 o'clock. So we're talking about Britain spending 5% of GDP by 2035, which will take our spending from roughly about 57.5 billion a year to 125 billion a year. And I wonder if recent events, certainly in the Middle East and hidden in amongst all of this as well, we've had President Putin, saying that he wants all of Ukraine. So while our back has been turned or our attention has been diverted elsewhere, he's made that statement. And Ukraine have said that, I think today, have said that Russia intends to attack a NATO country within the next 3 to 5 years, which is what many people suspected that he would do. And what he'll do is just do a little tiny attack to test NATO's willingness to take on Russia. Of course, he did that with Crimea and got away with it. So that's what Ukraine is warning us. I mean, obviously Ukraine would warn us of that because they want us to keep funding Ukraine to fight this war on behalf of the whole of Europe, which I happen to believe they are doing. So I think that it's a very tense time in the world, and I wonder if that has persuaded you that we would do well to be spending more money on defence than certainly we have been doing. It has been pitiful, actually, that we haven't been defending ourselves properly. So I'm just wondering if you are of that mind. Sarah is in Liverpool this morning. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Petrie.
So, what do you think about spending upwards of £125 billion a year on defence?
Over the next 10 years, we haven't got a choice, really. Well, if you take a look at what happened when the Tories got in with Cameron and Osborne, the undynamic duo who've managed to wreck the country, amongst others, as soon as they got in, they said austerity, austerity. And what was the first thing they did? They cut defence down to the bone.
Yeah.
They got rid of the Ark Royal, the Harriers, they've decimated the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, So basically, for the Army alone, we haven't got enough men to even fill a division that was, I think it was about 10,000 men. We might have enough for a modern-day division, but we certainly haven't got enough for what it was like in World War II. And our defences, well, to be perfectly honest, there's more holes in them than a string vest, and Russia likes to play silly beggars, shall we say, up and down the North Sea, in the Channel, and not to mention, just before the war in Ukraine, sitting off the coast of the west of Ireland, literally in Ireland's territorial waters. I know that because I've got relatives out there, and also I've got a copy of the Irish Independent and the Irish Times that mentioned it. So, if that's what Russia was, this is just for Russia, right? Just let's forget everybody else and just concentrate on the bogey on the doorstep. And we wouldn't stand a chance. Our defences are, I'd say, as deplorable as they were before World War II. We are in a shocking state. I mean, even, talking literally about defending our aircraft, we had that group go in and spray airplanes. There's no way they should have been anywhere near. Exactly.
They shouldn't have been within a mile of those aircraft.
You know something? We're supposed to have the RAF regiment, which are supposed to be the ones who guard.
Police that, yeah.
Yeah, they're supposed to have them. What happened? The Tories decimated them. Every single base, there's more holes in them than a sieve because of the Tory cuts.
And I think they're private security companies now that do the job.
Oh, Group 4 and the likes of them. We saw what happened. You know what they're like. You've only got to see what they do in the prisons. They've been hauled over the coals of that. So God help the MOD. They'd been better off keeping it in-house with the specialists within the armed regiments in the forces who will be guarding it all comes under military police. That was, I think, as well as the investigation, they would be the ones also, there's branches of them that will be guarding it, but they've cut all of that, plus the RAF regiment, the same and the equivalents in the Navy. And to be perfectly honest, we haven't got a choice. Now, as much as I would love to say I'd agree with, there's part of me that agrees with Grace, but if you want to make sure the world is safe, you've got to help you've got to help those in the world who are seriously impoverished. Make sure make sure they've got good healthcare, good education, all the rest of it. That would be great, but unfortunately we are not living in an ideal world. And as much as I think we should up the aid budget, which we should morally and ethically, we've also got to defend ourselves.
But part of the defence of this nation is exactly what Grace was saying, and that is that if you educate boys and girls in countries where all they're hearing is propaganda, if you're generous and kind to them, and you help mothers vaccinate their children and feed their children, then they pass it on and say, well, that came from the West, or that they're not the big old baddie that you're. If we're not there, that sort of soft power does create terrorism of the future, and also creates refugees of the future.
That's exactly it. We've got to, if you defences, to use the old phrase, defence of the realm, you've got to do it on two fronts. One, you've got to have the defence, the actual physical defences there, the armed forces. At the same time, you've got to use soft power, as you've said, Petrie. Things like what we do with the aid budget. What we all also we do to counteract as well, which our present government, previous governments really did cut back on, was the World Service, where alternative news to the propaganda that some of these places were hearing, like in Iran, and in other parts of the world, say China, North Korea, whoever, the people would go and listen to it, just like people did during the war.
Yeah.
With, Radio Free Europe.
The same can be said of the Voice of America, which Trump has just defunded.
Exactly.
They're incredibly important. I mean, I worked at the World Service for a while, and that was because the Foreign Office used to pay for it, didn't they? But the government then took it and handed it to the BBC to pay for.
Deliberately, because the one thing they wanted to do is they said, oh, we don't want to pay for that anymore. Why should we do that? Just palm it off on the BBC, just like with the
TV licenses
for pensioners, which by right was a government thing, not a BBC thing.
Yeah, it was. I think it was the DWP that was paying for that, and then they threw it back to the BBC as a cost-cutting exercise. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we mustn't underestimate how powerful soft power is.
It can do a damn sight more than
it doesn't do much today. But what it does is tomorrow.
It pays dividends.
Yeah.
It's something we've got to remember.
I completely agree with that. Sarah, great to talk to you. It always is. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to give you some details now on how to win those tickets. You'll have to just listen to me saying it. It's not going to be as sexy as, I don't know what it was on tape that we had. But here at Talk, we're giving you a chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you $5,000 of spending money. So here's everything that you need to know. Text WIN to 83338. Text WIN to 83338. I think that's all you have to do. I mean, that's it. I have to read the T's and C's, though. You've got to be 18 plus. This is in the UK, including Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word WIN to 83338 by the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. There you go. Text WIN to 83338 and you could have those pair of Oasis tickets, a hotel and $5,000. I'm going to take a quick break after that. I need a rest. Back.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you for the next 15 minutes or so. Latest news is Israel has agreed to the ceasefire so long as Iran does not launch further attacks. And Iran has signalled to the US that no further attacks will take place. That's from a White House official. So it seems like Israel is now on board as well with this ceasefire, which will occur in about 5 hours time from what I can figure out, or 12 hours or 24 hours. I couldn't quite understand Donald Trump's message, but still it seems that a ceasefire is now very firmly on the table, which is extremely good news. We're talking about whether the UK should be spending 5% of GDP. That's gone up considerably from the last time we had this conversation, which feels like it was years ago, but it probably wasn't, was it? We were talking about it going up to 3%. 5% is representative of around about £125 billion a year. That is still a good deal less than the NHS or the pensions bill or the welfare bill. So it is still lower than those bills, but can we afford it? And can we afford not to? Steve has said peace is having a bigger stick than the other person. That's certainly what Donald J. Trump believes and has potentially been proven right on this occasion. David is in Worcester. Good morning, David.
Oh, good morning, Petra. Like your little fully screen nail polish, love.
Sorry, you like what?
Your fully screen nail polish.
You've noticed. I didn't think anyone would notice. I'm so chuffed, David. Well done.
Thank you. No wonder I'm single.
Bless you, I know. Well, if you can admire nail polish, my friend, that's a good thing. That is metrosexual. Don't you worry about that.
I don't know what that means, but thank you.
It was a compliment. It was a compliment.
It was me who spoke to you about the jail.
About?
When I was in prison in the...
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
that story.
I ran in that. So I met a girl when I was in a deportation camp in Sri Lanka. She was from Tehran.
All right.
I went over to meet her. That's got this place called Keys, which is an island just off Tehran.
Yeah.
And they had like... It was weird. It was like I don't know how to describe it without swearing, but it's like a barricade, and then the women on one side and the men on the other.
All right.
And she was chaperoned by, like, Bonnie, she was called. She was a beautiful girl. We went on an island called Quiche.
And just the question everybody's going to want to know at this stage, did you have anything hidden up your bottom at the time?
Oh, come on.
I'm just asking. That's what everyone wants to know, David.
I probably had about 4 grams of stuff. But anyway, that's a different ball game. I didn't know nothing.
Oh, do you know what? That was my favourite call. I loved that call so much. It was so funny.
My mum's seen it, and she told me, she said, you got to be taking the son. So my dad didn't know I was in prison, did he? She told him I was working in a building in Dubai.
Oh, no.
Oh, my big song, mate. So...
Yeah, you perhaps shouldn't have phoned a radio station to talk about it then.
Yeah, but I didn't expect my dad to see it. He normally goes to bed at 10. So, anyway, we got over it. I buy my new suit.
Oh, that's what, with gold?
Well, no. I'm retired now, look.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've just come back from Kefalonia. So, we love the Greeks. God bless them. Greeks and a jet ski to Crete, and then Morocco, you're on your way, love.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I'm just figuring out what you would be doing on that jet ski. So I think we'll leave that there. David,
time to my eyes are not that great anymore. Anyway, so my army pension, right?
Yeah.
Is £1,632 a month.
Right, that's your army pension.
That's me. I got medical discharge in 2001 before I moved to California with the first. I get that every month since I got medical discharge.
Right.
Officers get 3 times the amount I get. Because obviously privilege, it's like they say there's no caste in the UK. Yes, they fucking, sorry. Yes, they're millionaires. So they get 3 times the amount of like a class person.
Yeah, a squaddy.
Oh no, I make commando, I got my wings and everything, but no, not a squad. They just get more because mummy and daddy can afford to pay more for their education, but it's their pensions triple what I get. You can Google it yourself right now. Look at it. Tell her now.
No, I've got no reason to disbelieve you. You've been very open with me in the past, so I do believe you.
Let's not mention that.
Yeah. But so you're an ex-soldier. When you see what's going on,
I was in 29 Commando, 203.
That's seriously impressive.
Not really.
Well, it is. If you're a commando, that's I know what it takes to become a commando.
I wasn't in the Marines. I went in the other way. I was too light. I'll tell you the true story now. I went for the padders, and I was 15 and 9 months. And you have to do a balloon course first, yeah? And the guy come over and went, have a chat with you, mate. I mean, I passed everything, the trapeze, fucking everything. And he said that you can't do it. I said, why? He said, if you jump out like you'll blow away. He said, you're too light. And I was crying my eyes out. It's for my mum. He said, well, he's passed everything. And I thought I failed. And that's why I got my Canadian wings, my American wings, yeah, in the end. Got everything, yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's serious soldiering. If you're at that age and you're trying to get into the paras, it's just very impressive. But with your sort of military background, when you see what's going on in places like, as has been going on in the Middle East, what does that make you feel?
It should have happened to begin with. I'm not bothered about other countries. I'm bothered about what's there.
Yeah.
If you look at like life, like we've had it with, unfortunately, I've got my dad's a Protestant, my mum's a Catholic, so we went through certain issues as young children. With, you know, I'm 49 now. You couldn't play football with Protestants. Yeah. You couldn't do this, and you know. What was that? Bloody Catherine Cooks and in Newcastle. It's a bit weird. Whereas now you don't know you're fighting anymore, do you?
No.
You don't honestly know who you're looking at. Because anyone can cut the beard off. Anyone can pretend, Petra. It's like my cousin was married to a Moroccan guy. He just got divorced. But no, he's like, so he's an arsehole anyway, but you just don't know. If you want to go to war, go to war. I'll sign back up tomorrow, mate. I don't give a shit. I'm going to put my teeth back in.
But the thing is about going to war, David, I'm going to say goodbye, but the thing about it is, if we're going to war in the defence of Britain, that is one thing. But if we get sucked into another war in the defence of America, then that's completely the other thing. And that was my concern over this whole thing, and with Lammy suggesting that we would come to the of our allies in the Middle East would have been a direct it would be just like the Iraqi war. We got sucked into that by America, and American-led wars don't do very well. They just don't. I mean, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, they end up pulling out. Nothing is better. Nothing is better. They've left it infinitely worse if you look at Afghanistan. So I think a lot of people in this country agree with fighting in defence of Britain and of British interests, but not always of British allies. And I think that was my worry, was that there would be a call to Article 5 of NATO. Again, the last time that was triggered was because of 9/11, and we got sucked into that whole illegal war. So I think that was my major concern in the Middle East at the moment, as if Iran had attacked and killed Americans or even British people, then we would potentially be sucked into another Middle Eastern war, and they never end well. You can't think of one that has. We've tried regime change. We put Saddam Hussein in place. That was a disaster. None of it works. It's not our region. So I think that's why a lot of people would say, yeah, let's use the defence money that we're going to get, 5% of GDP, but let's use it to defend the UK and not America or Americans getting involved in another war. We're not the big boys anymore. We're not. We used to be, but we're not. Our military is depleted. I think we've got something like 9 submarines, probably a dozen tanks. You know, we're small fry. We're really, really pathetic. And why Keir Starmer or anybody wants to try and, wrestle their way onto the big boys' table in order to pretend that we're still this empire, this warring empire. We're not. We're small, and we've not spent any money. The Royal Navy currently operates 9 submarines. 9. That's it. I think my brother commands one of them, the Astute class. So it's ridiculous that we still think we can play these big games, because we can't. So that's all I'm going to say, and we need to be a bit more introspective and just defend the UK. And by the way, I do believe that helping Ukraine is defending the UK. That is an ally. We are helping fight that war for us, so we don't have to. So I think we should be grateful to Ukraine. And as of January the 1st this year, the British Army had 108,413 personnel, which is, I think, 2,000 under what even the government recommends in terms of the numbers of personnel that we should have. And nobody wants to join up. Gregor said the youth see what happens to ex-service people and they won't join up. Yeah, because we treat them appallingly. It's disgusting. I don't blame anybody. I mean, as you know, I met a lot of people in the military, and they're all, I didn't meet a bad one. I'm sure there were wrong uns, but I didn't meet any. They were brilliant people, absolutely brilliant. And we should be incredibly proud of them. Another message here from Andrew in Salisbury. I couldn't agree with this more either. Yes, we should be spending more than 5% on defence, but you just know they will waste billions on procurement, admin, bad contracts and pensions. Nobody wastes money like the MOD used to. Well, I think they're all wasting money. It's absolutely extraordinary.